Mr. Chancellor, as public orator, may I present Mr. George Davies, a candidate for an honorary degree. Ladies and gentlemen, I have a carefully prepared oration here about George Davies, and he has an equally well-crafted reply. However, George is such an exceptional character that graduates and graduands, if you are going to find out anything about this remarkable man, I've decided, my neck is on the line here, to ask him a few impromptu questions so we can really find out about his amazing, innovative mind. George has been in retail for 57 years, so medical students, you were wondering, what can we find out from George that can be of application in medicine? But I hope to show you that we can find something. So here's the first question, George. You were brought up in Liverpool, and as a boy you played football. Tell us, who would you like to have been? George Best, the footballer, or George Harrison of the Beatles? Or were you just as happy to be George Davies?
Good question. Haven't got a clue.
I think you were happiest as being George Davies. Tell us what happened when the legendary Liverpool manager Bill Shankly came home to tea.
Well, I went to a school called Bootle Grammar, and I have to say it was the best learning I've had in my life because it was mixing with people, every people whose parents came from all walks of life, dockers, doctors, and my mother, who was an amazing woman but a bit of a snob, didn't like me going to a brutal school. My sister had gone somewhere else, a bit posher, and one of the things that I found when I went to that school, my mother said, I don't want you to get a Liverpool accent, so every Monday night at 4 o'clock, I had to get a bus into Liverpool, away from where I was living, to have elocution lessons. All right, you know what I mean? And then, because I was pretty good at soccer, I managed to get picked for England schoolboys, scored 2 goals at Burnley against Scotland. Scotland have never forgiven me. And then the next morning, Bill Shankly came round. And then he said, will you come and train with us? And I had a choice of working, you know, trying to train as a soccer player, or going to university. Anyway, he made the decision for me, because after training for 4 weeks, he said, in his Scottish accent, that he wasn't going to sign me on.
Okay.
So I went to Birmingham University, and again, because my mother knew exactly what I should do, I did dentistry, and it took me, I really loved it at Birmingham, and I played soccer for Britain, British universities, and then after 2 years, they said to me, you'll never make a dentist. That was the best day of my life.
So you moved on then to Littlewoods as a trainee. What did you learn at Littlewoods?
Well, one of the great things, where I've really been lucky, they gave me fantastic training. And for instance, I learned all about fabrics by working in mills in Yorkshire, because Yorkshire did all the wools, Lancashire did all the cottons, down here did all the knitwear and jerseys. And of course that's difficult for people today because there's very few of those left. But that grounding made me realize how important the whole of the textile industry was, and I understood it.
What did you do when you were threatened with a sack about the supply of white ankle socks at Whitsun in Manchester?
Yeah, that was a moment in my life, because today you'd be able to go and see people and say they can't find me, etc. But they said, do you realize, because what happened over Whitsun, ankle socks, there were Morris dancers, and the ankle socks sales in Manchester went from about, we used to talk dozens, went from about 300 a week to 3,000. And the manager of Manchester phoned up my boss saying, "Do you realise that idiot, Davies, has only sent us?" And I had a day to do it. So what I did, I got in my car and I came to Leicester. And I went to W. Bruins and picked up 3,000 ankle socks and took them back to Manchester. So I kept my job.
So you saved your job. Let's go on to the retailers Hepworth and Kendall's. How did you transform these two companies that weren't doing too well into the revolutionary new concept of Next?
I was approached. I'd had my own business. I then was approached by Hepworth, who weren't doing this really old-fashioned company, only had menswear, and they'd heard about I had a reasonable reputation, and they asked me to go up and have an interview. And I went up, saw the board, and I thought it was quite interesting, this. They said, "We've only got an hour and a half to talk to you, George. This is for a brand new business, but we'll only talk to you an hour and a half because we want to go to Headingley to watch the cricket." So they all disappeared to Headingley to watch the cricket. Anyway, I said I'd have to, if I was going to do it, I'd have to travel around myself. You know, you didn't have any drivers or anything. And I discovered where the gap in the market was. In those days, a bit like today, everybody was really aiming at the 20, 23, 24, 18-year-olds, the younger, and the displays weren't good. And I thought, well, there's the gap. And I then put the concept together, went back up to these boys in Hepworth. Fortunately, to start Next, they'd taken over a business in Leicester called Kendall's. Kendall's Keeps You Dry. And they'd taken that over, 70 stores. And I also, what I managed to do to get them to build a shop in the warehouse so that I could test how it would work, because I had to try and convert those 70 stores in 3 months. And we built it, so we knew the formula. Nobody had ever done that. Obviously, the key is, I'd say, it's not me, it's all my team. I'm a big team player. And we built it, we transformed the 70 stores, and Next just took off.
How did you develop this legendary loyalty of your staff?
Well, first of all, I don't call them staff. I call them colleagues. I never say people work for me, I say work with me. And this is true. I've never had an office in my life. I sit there and work wherever it's right. I don't have special lunches for me. I do my own bacon and egg sandwiches. That's how I've worked. I want to be part of the people, and I'm still am. I've never changed. And a little thing, and I say it to all of you if you're going to business, I know every birthday of all my people all over the world, and I set now with email, they get a birthday card. And they don't get expected. But it's things like that that are important. Too many people who get on think they're better than others.
In 2004, every coffee table of every house in the UK had one of these. Tell us about the Next catalogue.
First of all, it was called Next Directory.
Oh, sorry.
You'd think he'd know better than he's at the university, wouldn't you? Next Directory. I was getting well known by then, you know, for Next, and done so well. And I could see there was going to be a problem with traffic. And it's quite interesting, this, because if you can see a vision, you'll always do better. And if you see the vision, and just to let you know, in 1982, when I started, there were 10 million registered vehicles. Today, on the roads, 48 million. That's why the high street is in trouble. And so going back to that, I thought, I could see this coming. And the mail order in those days, in the 80s, was 28-day delivery. So I produced, with, again, all my team, a catalogue that also had swatches in, and nobody had done that. And the first night, I managed to get on the clothes show, and the night of the clothes show, we had 85,000. And I said, you've got to pay £3 for this, but if you order something from it, you'll get it off your order. And that night, that Sunday night after the clothes show, we had 94,000 people phoning up, because you couldn't do internet then, and it just took off. And so it's brilliant. No, brilliant for everybody.
Since Next, the big innovation probably was the realization that people would buy clothes in supermarkets. What's the story of George at Asda?
Well, it's a similar thing, you see. I could see supermarkets, Asda's, had parking. And so I know somebody wrote, when they read that I was doing this, some Londoner, I'm not anti all Londoners, but I'm not, wrote, nobody will buy clothing in supermarkets. So I proved them wrong, my team did. And I have to say again, when I started George, the team I started with had all worked for me at Next, and they were very loyal. And what I did, I called it the George Davies Partnership, and anybody in that team, that first 80 odd people, could buy in. Even my driver said, I've only got a 500 quid, can I buy 500 quid worth? I said, yes. So fortunately, when I sold out, because they wanted to buy me, this is 5 years later, everybody did well out of it. And that's what's the point if all your people, and I think there's too much selfishness in the world. People tend to want to look after themselves, and you've got to look after everybody if you're doing okay.
The next question is from graduating medical student Phoebe Allabone Salt. Stand up, Phoebe. Phoebe's a wonderful horn player and a champion of Médecins Sans Frontières. So here's the question. In 2017, you gave the University of Leicester £5.15 million. This is the largest ever philanthropic gift from any individual. This donation has had a significant impact on the state of medicine at our university. Can you tell us your motivation behind this donation?
I wanted to get an honorary degree. Now for the truth. There's a young gentleman here, Sir Peter Bell, who, as my mother would say when introducing him, this is the man who took my leg off. And it's true. My mother lost her leg, I brought it down, and it couldn't be saved. And I'd already, because of Next, had an association with the medical world in Leicester. But because of Peter's influence and lots of things, I got really involved in diabetes, vascular, all that. And the other thing I feel strongly about, when people criticize the NHS, anybody who's working in the NHS, they're criticizing them. So I'll never do that. And so the thing is, instead of criticizing, help. And so, after all these years, and where's the other guy, Rob? Rob? He puts me to shame because he's 6'8" and I'm 5'8", and I look like a little boy. But anyway, I'll forgive you for that. We worked together for many years, and we could see there was an opportunity. And also, where's Phil? I got together. I don't say, oh, here's the money. I then get together with them, and we put a newer idea, a new team together. which indirectly my charity funds. But the point is, I get involved, and I was talking about birthday cards. Every one of those people in there get a birthday card off me too, because NHS have never done, people running NHS have never done it. Anyway, the thing that makes me prouder than anything I've achieved is that this team have saved over 400 people from having their leg amputated in just over 2 years. So that's... Thank you.